Good morning, members. We have reached the appointed time, and we have also got a quorum. So let's start. Information paper issued since the last meeting. There's one, which is the paper set out on the agenda. Any comments on the information paper? If not, we move on to the next item. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Maybe we should also invite the officials to join us. May I remind members that on the 7th of January 2014, Tuesday, we have a special discussion on PWP item number 5019 GP Liantang Hengyun Wai Boundary Cross Control Point and associated works. This is an item for the meeting to be held on the 7th of January 2014. For our regular meeting, next regular meeting will be held on the 28th of January 2014, a Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. And we are going to have a briefing by the Secretary for Development in relation to the CE's Policy Address 2014. I propose that we allow a 2-hour slot for this item. At 4:30 on the same day, the AJLS panel will be also having a briefing on the policy address. Therefore, our meeting on that day will have to wrap up at 4:30 p.m. If the administration or members would like to raise any items for discussion before the middle of February, I would refer your request to the chairman to see if we need to convene a special meeting. Comments, members? No? Item 3. Proposed amendments to the Construction Works Registration Ordinance, Cap 583. We have the officials with us now. First of all, I'd like to welcome all the officials. The list of officials attending this part of the meeting is set out on the agenda. So over to the administration for a brief introduction. I understand you are going to use PowerPoint, and please be succinct. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, my voice is not very good today. We are going to use a number of PowerPoint slides to introduce the amendment. Actually, the CWRO, the Construction Works Registration Ordinance, was enacted in July 2004. And then in September, the registration started. Some 320,000 construction workers have got registered. That's for the first phase. There are other clauses to be implemented, and that is construction workers should be registered for their specific skills. For this purpose, we have entered into discussion with the industry. Starting from 2009, we have been studying the relevant issues with the industry. And then in 2010-2011, a lot of discussion took place. Committees were set up to review various issues, and we also set up a committee on the proposed amendments to the ordinance. And then we also consulted them in 2012 on specific proposed amendments. So we have had more than 100 meetings with the industry, and therefore we have come up with the latest proposed amendments. They have expressed their concern about the division of labor registration. For some of the disciplines, well, they may have difficulties. They may be skilled in one particular matter. For example, they may be boarding, and they can also dismantle the hoarding and other related issues. Some of them are rather specialized. If we say in the future they have to be registered for specific skills, they just cannot get registered. And some other difficulties are that they are involved in small-scale construction works. For example, a U-shaped pipe to be laid on a street.
We will exempt some minor works from the specialized skills, and so the specialized skills won't influence or impact on them. I missed out something just now. I should also add that in this single skills, we will change the registration from trade to skills. So under a trade, in the future, we will encourage workers to, aside from registering their specialized skills, we will also amend a schedule so they can register their specialized skills. So aside from the specialized skills, we'll add a general category. So if they can handle different skill sets, then we'll have a general registration so they can enhance their skills, and we also will encourage them to develop the different skill sets. Another concern is the different skill areas. If they're engaged in one trade, but in their daily work, for example, they might be working in one site and they want to work in another site, is that possible? Currently, this occurs in the industry. For example, some marble workers, there might be no marble work. They might have to lay tiles. So then we need to be able to resolve this problem. And we see that in similar skills, it has to be similar. They can prove that the skill sets used in laying marble and laying tiles are the same, but they will have to register it under a large category. So it will allow them to work in this different skilled sets. So we see that a lot of workers are in their mid-40s, 50s, so we feel that not all of them have to take testing all again. That's not feasible, so we have some measures. So under our one-off registration in the beginning, if they already have 10 years experience, we have some arrangements where they don't need to do testing and can be registered, or they might undergo simple testing. So the difference will be, we'll have to look at on 29th of December 2005 that they already had no less than 6 years relevant experience. Why do we have to use the date 29th of December 2005? It's because the workers with more than 6 years experience at that time could be registered as provisional skilled workers. So aside from these people, we also foresee we might need some simple question and answer, even if they're illiterate. We can conduct oral testing and they can register themselves. We also consider that for emergency construction work, for example, if some underground facilities need urgent work, if the contractor doesn't have these registered workers on site, we can implement a provisional exemption. That is, within 48 hours they can use non-registered workers, but after 48 hours they should be able to find the relevant skilled registered workers. Another area is small-scale construction work. We see in major works we want to implement the specialized skills. These are for new infrastructure, new large-scale projects, where we will implement this. And in the second part, after implementation of large-scale works, so we'll implement it later on in small-scale works. So under the minor works program, we now have 3 categories of works: category 1, 2, and 3. At category 3, we will exempt the small-scale. We'll have exemptions for these workers, but for regular maintenance or minor works, these will be implemented in the second phase. So we'll have phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 for new large projects where we have specialized skills registration. Then we'll implement phase 2. That would conclude my report. Thank you. We have 4 speakers: Lam Ka-kit, Lo Wai Kok, Mak Mei Kyun, and Tan Ka Piu, who wish to speak. And Mr. Wu Ji-wai. So I suggest 4 minutes. The Civic Party is concerned whether this arrangement will lead to inconvenience, because you are dividing skills so finely. A lot of work can be done by a typical worker without training. So by prohibiting them from conducting work that they're not registered is a criminal liability. So whenever you have criminal liability, you have to make sure people affected when they will breach the law. Otherwise, it's not in line with our spirit of the law. If it's ambiguous, it makes compliance difficult. So I'd like to ask the administration. I know you've convened more than 100 meetings. So do the different construction associations feel that when the amendments are implemented, are they comfortable? Are they confident that they can comply? So have you canvassed the stakeholders' responses? And before and after legislation, how will the administration help these workers to prevent any concern on their part? I'm happy that in our consultation with the industry, I could say the majority of stakeholders are very proactive. They feel that they need to enhance worker status. So specialized skills is a big step. In the past, anybody could take up the work. So there was no acknowledgement of qualifications and skills. So on this occasion, the industry have taken a big step. It's true there are some legal prohibitions, but we need registration and prohibitions so that workers feel that they have a status. So regarding finely divided categories, we feel that we have coordinated our efforts with the industry. We are using the legislation to reflect their work methods. We're not making it up and forcing them to comply. That's our big principle. So aside from the division of work categories, we identified the single skill issue. They can register these single skills, and they can also register general skills. So the industry has led our work. Your question was, how can we allay their concerns? We will discuss with the Construction Council, we'll draft some guidelines, we'll tell them how to comply with the law. Mr. Lo Wai-kok. Specialized skills is something worth supporting, but this amendment information has generated a lot of heated responses. Some small construction work associations say that they have not been consulted. So even though you say it's implemented in phases, but your phase 1 infers as a phase 2, and phase 2 will include minor works. So in private, these projects are very frequent in private property. This would involve different skills, but the scale of the project is very small. But your different categories and divisions are very fine. Even painting is divided into latex and hand paint. Well, when I do home renovation, it's very difficult to recruit different painters. I know you have different categories by different costs. So when I do home renovation, I might not be able to attend electrical. I need to monitor the workers. I need to check their registration. So these details, as the saying goes, the devil's in the details. So the concerns are not unwarranted. So could you explain the exemptions, the division of work? In the past, you just heard from large government contractors, but have you considered the small works? Well, home renovation, you don't need to worry, because under the legislation, we are regulating buildings, so painting at home will not be regulated by this legislation. But regarding consultation, we canvassed large and small contractors and worker associations. You are correct, Mr. Lowe. There are individual small contractor associations that have different opinions, whether worker salaries will go up and so on. And after registration, will we have insufficient workers? But we feel this has been taken care of. So under the minor works ordinance, we have 3 categories of works. We won't regulate the category 3. Categories 1 and 2 will be dealt with later. So these are minor works, and we are thinking that it might just be tens of thousands of dollars, and they would be exempted. But can we have category 1, 2 works under the buildings ordinance? So this is something we'll look at.
On the whole, we think that the proposed registration must categorize different classes of works. Many workers have got registered. We are not concerned that there will be a shortage. In the coming 1 or 2 years, more will get registered for their skills or trades. Ms. Alex Mack, 2 questions. When a worker seeks registration, it said that he has to prove that he has got 6 years of experience before that September 2005. How can this be done? Maybe say for a lift maintenance worker, he had worked for many different companies. So how can such a worker prove that he had 6 years of experience? Would he have to rely on testimony from his employers, those firms, those companies? And also for those who did not have the prerequisite experience on or as at the 29th of December 2005, the worker might already been registered as a senior worker, but he could not prove experience. So what would happen to him? Is it going to be difficult for the worker to get registered? For example, he has got 10 years of experience, but he started to be a hoarding worker in 2009. On the question of proof, we allow a number of approaches, a number of ways: work experience certified by previous employers, or they can also seek help from trade unions. And the trade union can provide supplementary proof after talking to the worker, saying that this worker should have got 10 years of experience, although documentation is not complete. So we accept a number of ways to prove this. And if on the prior to the 29th of December 2005, he did not have 6 years of experience, but now he has got 10 years of experience. For such a case, we would ask some questions, not a test. If you don't have the experience and you want to get registered, you have to undergo a trade test or skill test. But if the worker claims to have 10 years of experience, then we can ask him some questions through a questionnaire, ask him to take a simple test, and then the worker can be registered as a skilled worker. And if 10 years ago he did not work in the same trade, he only just switched to this new trade in the just 2 years ago, then the registration may not be accepted because we will be asking questions as to their experience, and we may not be able to allow the worker to register in his new trade. Mr. Tang Ka-pil. Well, there are two perspectives. The one from the trade unions and another one from the community. There are 133 skills or trades. Some are E&M, lips, and very specialized skills. My question is, have you consulted all the relevant sectors, not just trade unions, professional bodies, and other related associations over the 133 trades? Because when we gave the paper to the union for lift maintenance workers, they said it was the first time they see it. So have you consulted all the relevant organizations? Some unions agree with the proposed future direction, but they want a better arrangement for the recognition of experience. So we are talking about 133 trades, not necessarily unions. Have you talked to them all? And in the community, I was a district council member when the minor works system was introduced. In many housing estates, they have racks with hanging ropes for the laundry drying. And they would just ask someone to replace the ropes if a new one is needed. And now after the registration system was introduced, such hanging racks are covered because they could not get registered workers to do it. And many shops are unable to offer the service, so they may have to spend thousands of dollars just to get such a minor work done. So, like other members, I'm concerned that this may become a nuisance. On consultation, you can see in the annex of the paper that we have consulted a lot of organizations, including those working on E&M projects. But would there be smaller unions which have not been covered? Well, we have asked many federations of unions to extend our reach, and if we knew of any union which would like to be brief, we would also do it. I think that the information was disseminated far and wide, and now we are tying up loose ends and working on the legislative amendments. And there are also views on some details, and we are still working on the improvement. As for the drying racks, cloth drying racks, I think it's a Class 3 minor works, including the air conditioning supporting frame. These are exempted. I I understand. I've noticed that small-scale renovation companies have got the minor works registration. If I need to have a rack erected, I can go to a small shop in the neighborhood, and they will tell you that they have got registered as minor works contractors. Mr. Uchiwai, I said that 320,000 workers have been registered. According to this new system, registration by their skills and trades, what is going to happen to the industry as a whole. So you understand that there will be 320,000 construction workers. But what is the number of those actually providing the service? Because this new system has led to an increase in costs in the industry, and the cost will be passed on to ordinary people or the consumer. So you are going to allow cross-working as well as registration for that specialized skills. Can you not provide for the very detailed categorization so that we don't have so many different skill sets, and more workers will be available in the community? I'll do something, and then I'll say something, and then I'll ask Mr. Lau to supplement. So on the point of whether 133 is too complicated. If we have 133 trades or skill sets, and we generalize by combining some of them, you may think that is a streamlining of the procedure, but to the trades, to the workers, that may not be beneficial. For example, if you're a carpenter, there are a number of skill sets. The worker will have to refer to the registration information. It will be easy for them to find out which one they belong to, because we follow the industry's practices. For example, whether they're responsible of building or a demolition of hoarding and so on. As for the question of cost or pay, it's a question of supply and demand. We have 320,000 registered. We believe skilled workers will get registered, and there will be a substantial number of workers, registered workers, available in the market. So we allow the senior or experienced workers to get registered in the initial phase of 2 years. So we are not going to affect the supply, and as a result, we don't think we would create an increase in cost. As for the situation of registered workers, 320,000 of them, I'll defer to my colleague. There was a telephone survey conducted earlier by unions, assembled telephone survey, which interviewed some 20,000 registered workers. Some of those registered workers are no longer working in the industry. Some 70,000 have left on a temporary basis, and others are working as construction workers on big sites, or they may be carrying out renovation works. Can we have breakdowns of the different categories of workers? 110,000 among the 320,000 have been registered as skilled or semi-skilled workers. So 110,000 workers in this category would be qualified to be registered for specific skills, specific trades. But of course, we have breakdown figures of different skills or different sets, but are they able to meet the market demand? I don't think so. So we need time to allow those who haven't registered to be registered as skilled or semi-skilled workers. And then we'll have this figure of workers available in the market. Mr. Yu Si Weng, I think it's good to have a proper division of labor and proper registration. We know that there are many projects being carried out, and we know that there are 133 trades. I don't know how many licenses you are going to issue, and you have licenses for skilled ones, for those who are working generally in different disciplines.
Some people find it inconvenient. They don't want to register, so it will deter people from joining the profession. So I would like to ask, how many licenses or registration categories are there? Some are also physically demanding, lifting. They might work a few days and take a rest. It's arbitrary. So if you require registration, it will also affect people joining that trade. And for some trades, will you consider exemptions such that there can be more flexibility? So easier jobs can be filled easily. In your paragraph 17, you also refer to emergency construction works. Minor works have exemptions. It shows that in temporary situations you have to accept different workers. So why don't you just exempt certain workers and simplify it? Otherwise, how would you define emergency construction work? How would you define minor works? You need someone to decide whether it's a minor work. I don't think you can. I think you could try considering exemptions. Actually, registration, there are just two, skilled and semi-skilled registration. But within these two categories, there are different trades. So in our proposal for even a general registration, they just include more categories, but there are still two registrations, skilled and semi-skilled. And if they're a general worker, they're not a skilled worker, a semi-skilled worker, they just have a green card, they can still work in a construction site. Some don't require skills, some jobs don't require, out of the 133 trades, they don't have any of the 133 skills. They just lift. They just lift objects. They can still work in a construction site. We're here talking about skills. So through legislation, we want to enhance workers' skill qualifications. Regarding attracting young workers, we think this is a good direction because young people, they need career prospects. People now have the view that construction workers, renovation workers, they're only paid at a daily rate. But if they're given courses, tests, and a semi-skilled registration, if they stick to the job for 2 or 3 years, they can become skilled workers, and there is a further career ladder to take a general registration test. If there's an obvious career ladder that we feel is attractive to young people. Well, Chairman, specialized skills and registration, that sounds very nice. But when you implement it, what are the costs and benefits? I know, well, you've held 98 consultations. You've also consulted scuba divers twice. So it's very detailed. The document says they have a consensus to amend this legislation. Well, it's not strong opinions. We're most concerned about harassment to the public. I'm concerned about costs, because these will be borne by the consumers. For small contractors, they have a large pressure. Will this squeeze them out of the market? So large corporations will be the only ones that survive. So I've also heard that people say that they would surround the Development Bureau if you want to bulldoze this legislation through, in paragraph 16, it refers to registered skilled workers can carry out other similar skill works independently. Now, what do you mean by that? And for minor works, these can also be exempted, but in paragraph 18, some skills will not be exempted due to safety concerns. And what is the definition of minor works? Should it be defined by project costs, such as 10 million or below? This consensus view is not that they feel they want to amend this proposal. We are proposing some amendments. They feel that the specialized skills provisions, they feel as a consensus that it needs to be improved. Regarding small contractors, it was mentioned just now. Our view is a lot of small contractors, they employ some staff. I feel a lot of skilled or master skilled workers have already registered. They don't even need to conduct a test, or if they were registered prior to 29th of December 2005. Whether the cost will rise, whether there's labor shortage, well, I explained just now. Out of 320,000 or 200,000 actively working, they will register. So the supply is not inadequate. And we are also enhancing training. We want to attract more people into the industry. And for minor works, we don't have a simplistic view. We have a schedule stating exemptions. For example, certain trades, if it involves electricity, and I mentioned we can have cross skills, the registered workers working cross trades. If you're a marble layer, you can also lay tiles. But for scuba diving or electricity work, you cannot, if you don't have, if not registered, you cannot work there, because this is a safety concern. We will have a schedule stating which trades can be crossed. You won't use project cost as an exemption criteria. No, I explained. We are implementing this in phases. In phase 2, we will have category 1, 2 minor works under the building ordinance covered, and other maintenance works. So can we set a figure of 10 million? 10 million is a large project. We are considering that in phase 2. Chairman. We are now dealing with specialized skills. Now you are an administrative officer and you're explaining this to us. So the first question is, have you conducted some calculations if this amendment were implemented and consumers engage small contractors, will they pay more? And how many workers will be driven out of the industry? Will this occur? If you haven't done that, legislators will ask these questions. I want to defend the underprivileged, the disadvantaged. If small contractors lose their business, workers lose their jobs, that's the question I want to ask you. You're saying we'll implement this in phases, but once you get the ball rolling, it will continue. So you can't blame stakeholders being worried, because when you amend the law, their interests will be affected. Just saying you've done consultation is meaningless. You can go down to Central and say we're amending buildings ordinance. Would that suffice? No. If stakeholders feel they haven't been consulted, they come to me to lodge a complaint. But now the official responsible is now working in the Water Supplies Department. So how can I endorse that? Well, first I have to disclose the incompetence of the consultation work. Lam Tin Sing is now working in the Water Supplies Department. Well, even the civil servants aren't specialized. You might be a temporary worker. Is Lam Tin Sing still responsible for this? He's now in Water Supplies Department. Lam Tim Sing. Well, the government isn't carrying out specialized work and engaging consultation. So did Lam Tin Sing leave you with any advice? just because of this, on this alone, I will not endorse your proposal. So he's now dealing with the burst water mains. How can he help you? Coming back to this legislation, well, I've heard legislators have a similar concern. How will this impact workers? How will this lead to unemployment? If you look at 2004, when we had this legislation, we had phase 1 in 2007, it was implemented smoothly.
The workers were required to get a safety card before they can work on construction sites. The concern was whether these people would become jobless. And now we want to move forward. We are saying that if they are skilled, as they claim, they will get registered. We want to regulate the skill levels, or to make sure that the workers are skilled, instead of depending on an informal system where no proper recognition is given. So we have come up with an arrangement in consultation with the industry. If someone has worked for a number of years in the particular trade, there's no question of this worker not able to get registered. But that's not the point. We are asking you to provide a platform. We're not against making changes. The question is whether you have done some projection. You have population projections for the next 20 years. But what about this? If you consult the member sitting next to you, if they ask them how much capital you have, are you going to be driven out of business? Are you going to have sufficient numbers of workers if this goes ahead? If you haven't done the consultation, then I cannot believe you. I don't think you have asked people like Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, because he was so hesitant when he spoke. You don't need to talk to me. I'm saying that the consultation is not comprehensive. I haven't been consulted to start with. I think the Deputy Secretary has heard you. Any brief response? We should have completed this item at 10 a.m., but we started a bit late. No need to respond to me. It's a waste of time. We still have Dr. Kenneth Chan for the first round, and Dr. Lo Wai Kwok and Mr. Chan Chi-chin for the second round. Who else would like to speak? I think that's about all the time we have for this item. Dr. Kenneth Chan, in Annex B, 8, paragraph 8, 9, paragraph 9, and paragraph 10 are about exemption and also supervision. And you allowed the workers to put up defenses in relation to criminal liability. For example, they have been misled, or the contractor failed to obey or follow certain guidelines. So these can be advanced to absorb them from criminal liabilities. It said that the Council would issue code of practice. If you cannot give us the code of practice today, well, and since we want to have a full set of documents, and the code of practice in paragraph 9 has some legal status, although it's not part of the law. And that is when there's a court proceeding, a legal process, the court may take into account the code of practice. So this is somewhat unclear to me. We hope we can see how the code of practice is drafted. Otherwise, we don't know how we can help workers to refer to the code of practice as a defense, and how the court may take this into account in legal proceedings. So will the administration tell us more about the code of practice, the timetable, the exact contents, when you propose amendments to the ordinance? Deputy Secretary, we need the code of practice. As it has been pointed out, that there are details. What do you mean by supervision? If I'm a worker, and if the supervisor is on the 5th floor, and I don't go up to the 5th floor all day long. So what do we mean by instruction and supervision by the supervisor? We must have some guidelines setting out how this can be complied with. You have to do this and that in order to comply with this requirement of instruction and supervision. And this is the practice we have followed in this ordinance and in other ordinances. We have to come up with the legislative amendments first. The code of practice will come in the following year. We need to discuss with the industry on the most appropriate way to go about it. Because the code of practice is not a law, it's not a piece of subsidiary legislation. So procedurally, we cannot submit it to this council. And of course, once it's drafted, it will be promulgated, it will be published for the public. Well, that's a problem to me, because such a code of practice shall have a legal status, as mentioned here, and you are going to ask the court to take this into account. So this is just like any other piece of evidence. So in scrutinizing the legislative amendments, I will need to know how the code of practice is drafted. Otherwise, how can I be assured that this is going to help the worker? In the second quarter of 2014, they are going to present a bill. So it's just a reasonable expectation that we should be given the code of practice at the same time for our reference. Because if you say a worker can refer to this code and the court can take this into account, we must know what it is. Second round, 2 minutes for each members. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Leung Kok Hong has left, but I don't think I was hesitant in my first round of speech. And I don't think it's practical to ask officials to be responsible for specific duties from the very beginning to the end, because from time to time they would get rotated. I don't think it's practical to set minor works with reference to the project cost of $50,000. And you should inform the industry of the progress you have made when you move along. Even for the second stage, renovation work will not be covered. But for private properties, residential and business may involve structural works, Class 1 or Class 2 minor works. The owners or the management companies should be aware of the legal requirement. So please consider this in the context of exemptions. Even for emergency work, the time limit is 48 hours. It's is questionable. Would there be people to time the project, and after the initial 48 hours, the workers will be asked to discontinue? You are going to draft the bill, and the bill will be tabled here, so more detailed discussion would follow. So what's your timetable? When are you going to table your amendments according to your plan? I just want to know when. The second quarter next year. In the second quarter of next year, we are going to submit a bill. For the first round, we have Mr. Chan Ha-kan, 3 minutes for you. I had to attend another meeting. I met with an association representing minor works contractors, and they expressed some concern about the proposed amendments to CAP 583. I wrote to the Secretary. I believe Mr. Chan have also received a copy. I have a few questions. I hope Mr. Chan would take some follow-up action. During the consultation, it said that you did not talk to them. I don't know whether it's true or not. You may wish to clarify. I hope you would consult them, because the renovation sector will be affected. It would affect the livelihood of many contractors. If we ask for the registration for skills or for specific trades, it would lead to higher pay, and small and medium-sized contractors may not be able to afford the higher pay. They will be driven out of the market. Is this something good? Please think through. Second, as Dr. Lo Wai Kwok has said, the threshold is set with reference to the cost, and is set at 50,000 for the purpose of the exemption. Please consider whether this amount is appropriate. For many minor works, $50,000 don't allow you to do a lot. If the line is drawn in such a way, many contractors' business will be affected. And if we ask for specific skills for specific works, it may mean much higher costs, and our people, the consumer, will have to pay for this. For example, if they want to do something to fix their windows, they need to spend a lot of money. And if they want to get someone registered to work for them, they may have to pay a much higher cost. And some of them may resort to the employment of unregistered workers. Actually, we did talk to this association representing the minor works contractors. We have had 2 to 3 meetings with them, and prior to that, we organize briefing sessions, and their representatives might have already attended those briefings. I cannot say that we have reached every one of them at every stage. But I have to say that we have done quite a lot of consultation. We have covered quite a large field. Their views are noted, and we'll consider them carefully. Mr. Chen Yunhan. Trade unions are in support of this exercise. Well, I had to attend the other meeting earlier, and now I'm here to listen to fellow members. The grandfathering arrangement will only apply to those with 10 years of experience. Well, what if a person with very good skills? Do you still ask for 10 years of experience first? And there are workers handling trees. It's very specialized. Do you have a special trade for this group of workers? Well, we have looked into this skill of tree sawing, but many of them are not working in the construction industry. They will be working on the road or at the foot of a hill. It's not a job. It's not a job that you commonly found on a construction site. Construction and trees can be closely related. If you look at the work on trees in isolation, it's not construction work. The union has strong views about this. I would say that in many construction projects, you have people working on trees. The deputy chairman is aware of this. Many people think that arborists or tree experts should be covered in this scheme. Let me talk about tree experts or tree sawing first, and then the 10 years experience requirement. That would be it would be disproportionate if we say that if you saw trees on a construction site, you have to get registered, but you don't have to get registered if you do work on a road. It's just a question for the departments concerned.
So, okay, 工地.
So if they're working on a construction site, they should be given a registration. It's the same as home renovation. It comes under construction. Please consider this. We also have to draw a line for master skilled workers. They don't have 10 years experience, but they are very skilled. They can take a test. If they pass the test, in the TCM there were a lot of registration. There were a lot of problems. You should review the 10-year criteria very carefully. 残疾区. If this is endorsed, it will only be implemented in large works 2 years down the road, and you will monitor the industry to decide a suitable time for phase 2. So if it's endorsed, if that is your decision. You don't need to consult us again. Is that correct? If phase 1, that is new and large projects, if that can be implemented, it would be very smooth. The remaining category 1, 2, and minor works shouldn't be problematic. And we'll consult the industry. We should be able to. So once this amendment is endorsed, then it's automatic. We should be able to decide the time frame. 梁美芬 renovation workers. I'm familiar with this because my father is a contractor, and the renovation workers basically live from hand to mouth. So aside from their remuneration, they should also be recognized by society, because the second generation don't want to join the industry because they see how hard their fathers work. I think for people who want to join the industry and see a career path, this amendment is a positive step. But I would like the administration to understand that workers, contractors, they work just as hard, they live from hand to mouth. So you need to listen to the industry to how to help them make the transition. So we can see the renovation work is very important. They are the first to detect any building defects. When things go wrong, they have to bear liability. So they are in a very difficult position. So you need to provide assistance when the industry goes through a transition. When the industry is regulated, it's harder to join the profession. I agree with Ms. Tan Yun Han. When TCM was regulated, they had the same difficulties. You need to provide channels for old masters to register. So all this needs to be considered. Otherwise, they are mentoring disciples, but they cannot join they cannot be registered. I see some young people in the last few years where they've been promoted, they can make a good income. So that should be able to attract young people. So you need more promotion and advertising. So we'll conclude this item. Next, agenda item number 4, Public Works Project 765CL Anderson Quarry Road site. So let's invite the officials.
First
of all, let's invite the officials. I won't introduce them one by one. So, can the officials take us through this development? I'll say a few words and hand it over to CEDD. So when the Anderson Road Quarry stops work by 2016, we will rehabilitate works later on, and we had already outlined the OZP to development panel before, and today we would like the development panel support to take this public works to go through the site formation and promote it to category A so that we can start works as soon as possible. I'd also like to mention that the Anderson Road Quarry is an important part of land supply in the midterm. It can provide 9,400 units and it can accommodate 25,000 people. So we hope that this public work can take place as soon as possible. So CEDD can go through the details. I'd like to provide some background. The quarry will cease operations at mid-2016. It can provide some 40 hectares So the government wants to provide housing through this plan. So we have a final recommended outline development plan formulated and was presented to LegCo on 26th of March 2013. To speed up the development, the CEDD at the end of last year had conducted a feasibility study. The feasibility study was based on the outline zoning plan and included traffic impact assessment. The feasibility study has been completed, and the conclusion is it is feasible. The quarry can accommodate 25,000. The private to subsidized housing ratio is 80 to 20, and can provide about 9,400 units, and we can set aside 12 hectares for housing. This illustrates the quarry. The land above the red line is the quarry. The land is situated on the slope. To develop Anderson Road Quarry, we need a series of engineering works. The site formation, some 40 hectares. We also need some infrastructure, sewage, utilities. There are also some slopes in the northeast, so we need to do some geotechnical works there. We need site formation, and in the surrounding area we also need to improve the traffic. We need to make foot traffic connections. The first traffic improvement is in the Duck Road and Salmoping Road. We want to build a bridge to straddle this area, so vehicles traveling from Salmoping Road can turn right without stopping. The second improvement is on the Duck Road. We will add some embarking banks. We'll also have a public transport interchange, so the residents in Bodat Estate connect to the public transport interchange. The third improvement is on Clearwater Bay Road. To the east, we'll have an area for turning around. They cannot turn right towards Anderson Road. The fourth improvement is on New Clearwater Bay Road towards Choi Hong. It's now single lane. We will convert it to a two-lane highway. So aside from road improvement works, we also want to build pedestrian connections. One will connect to the Anderson Road Quarry. One will connect Sao Mau Peng, Choi Peng, Gun Tong to the MTR. At the south of Sao Mau Peng, Hiwa, Choi Ping MTR. The third connection will be from the Anderson Road development to Bo Dat, Sam Mo Ping South, Hiu Gong Street towards Gun Tong. And the fourth connection connects the Anderson Road Quarry development to the public transport interchange. We will build footbridges with lift towers and escalators. So in this picture example, we now have a steep slope. If they want to go from Hiuming to Hiugong, they have to go in a roundabout way or take a 200-step staircase. So we might have a lift tower to facilitate commuting between these two areas.
優化嘅係人行路。
We estimate that some 25 lifts and 30 escalators will have to be built for these pedestrian connections. The total length will be more than 1,000 meters, and this is what you can expect for the escalator to be built there. With your support, we hope we will be upgrading the detailed design and site investigation part of the project to Category A, and then we will seek the support of PWSC, and funding application will be submitted to the FC early next year, and then we can start the detailed design and site investigation in June 2014, and in the middle of 2016 we can commence the site formation and infrastructural works, and the land will be become available starting from 2019 for development. That's all for my presentation. Your members' comments are most welcome. Before I give the floor to members, may I remind members that according to Rule 83A of our Rules of Procedure, if a member has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest to the topic under discussion, the member should declare his or her interest before speaking. Members may now raise questions. I'll allow each member 4 minutes for both questions and answers. 2 members would like to raise questions. They are Mr. Albert Chan and Ms. Chen Yun Han. Mr. Albert Chan. Thank you, Chairman. The quarry site will be used partially for residential development. I don't think anyone would object to this. How can we make the best use of this quarry site? How can we give full play to the advantages of this quarry site in terms of thinking, in terms of vision? How can we do something that we can all be proud of? I wonder the administration has given thought to some further ideas. There will be more than 10 hectares of land for a park, a quarry park. If you look at other countries, I think you can look at Eden project of Cornwall. They also use a site for thematic park. In considering the use of this quarry site, has the administration referred to special projects implemented in other places? This is a big quarry site, and we have another one on Narman Island. I think we should make use of the special characteristics of the quarry site and develop some thematic park which we can all be proud of. That would be wonderful. I wonder if the administration can consider this at this point. Of course, it's not a decision to be made by the Development Bureau alone. You may have to consult the other bureaus. But if we give the green light for this project to go ahead as it is, this will be a good opportunity lost. Mr. Chan. Well, we have considered that this used to be a quarry site. In the future development projects, we would make the best use of it. So in our conceptual planning, we have included a park featuring the quarry site characteristics, and we also propose some cave development, which will be used for potentially used for commercial purposes. As for the quarry site, there we are now in discussion with the LCSD over possible developments. Well, I understand your thinking is in the paper, but I think it would be a waste of this site if you just adopt the usual practice. Please refer to the Eden project of Cornwall. It was previously a quarry site as well, and now it's very special and very successful. They are doing something cultural, and it's also a venue for music performances and so on and so forth. If you adopt the rigid conceptual framework of bureaucracies, no development, no change is possible. So perhaps you should think out of the box and allow something new, something special for the quarry site. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to recognize this as a previous quarry site. And if you compare this one with the Eden project of Cornwall, well, you would you'll be seen in a very poor light. Just please consider this. It's a big piece of land, 17 hectares altogether. Well, we understand the land is in short supply, is scarce. Although the topography would present difficulties, you can certainly come up with something innovative and practical. I would like to stress the point that the administration should consider the suggestions from Mr. Albert Chan. Ms. Chen Yin-han. Well, I'll be referring to all problems. Below this site, there will be public rental housing estates near Ping, correct? No change about that? And now you're talking about the site above the PRH development. You are going to provide some accommodation for some 20,000 people, right? And there's no concern about having a wall structure or wall effect. Why can't we have taller buildings here? People who are concerned about ventilation or environmental protection, things that we can allow higher or taller buildings here, because instead of trying to build pencil-like buildings in congested areas, you should allow more buildings or higher port ratio here. Well, it has to do with doing the piling in a better way. Members, every morning the vehicles coming from Clearwater Bay has to cope with the congestion. And now for this big area, there will be 70,000 people living there. and you are asking people to use the Eastern Harbour Crossing. We are told that the road will be expanded. Ping Shek on this side, Choi Hong on that side. Early in the morning, if you leave Choi Hong and via Clearwater Bay Road, it's very congested. Near the roundabout, it's congested. I talked to the Transport Department together with some architects. We should do something about the traffic there. Airport here, Choi Hong here on this side, the Ping Shek on this side. Traffic congestion is serious. I've been told that it takes 30 minutes for just that stretch going downhill, and the administration is not taking the opportunity to improve the situation. So you are asking people to, or you are encouraging people to use the Eastern Harbour Crossing. And now it's a very roundabout way of traffic arrangement. I understand the mentality. They just want to look at this development, and the government should be proactive. It's a big project. Why don't you take the opportunity to solve this long-standing congestion problem? Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Ms. Chan, for your question. I'll invite my colleagues from CEDD to explain the proposed traffic arrangements for this project. First, on the question of capacity. In terms of the port ratio for this quarry site, we have a planned population of 25,000. It's an increase over the previous figure of 23,000. Why do we settle for 25,000? We have to look at the constraints, planning constraints, and also traffic constraints. Well, since you talk about traffic constraints, why don't you improve the traffic? Maybe they should explain. Traffic is important. And you have to consider the traffic conditions in the vicinity. I think many members are concerned. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I understand the concern raised by Ms. Chan. If this Anderson Road quarry site is developed, and then the concern to us is whether there will be traffic problems. We have to take into account various factors. And under various public works projects, we have worked on a few things, such as the Cheung Kwan O Lam Tin, the tunnel, the P2 trunk road, and the Highways Department would also be carrying out the Central Kowloon route. Altogether, they would form Route 6. And then vehicles leaving Cheung Kwan O would use this Lam Tin tunnel so as to lessen the volume of traffic along Cheung Kwan O Road. And when Route 6 is completed, the spare capacity of Cheung Kwan O Road will be used to take care of traffic which used to be along Clearwater Bay Road. And the volume along Clearwater Bay Road can be reduced by 10%. And then, at the same time, we have the housing development in this Anderson Road quarry site, and the traffic volume will go up as a result. So with the plus and the minus of the traffic volume, the Cheung Kwan O Road traffic will be more or less the same. We understand the Cheung Kwan O Choi Hong interchange is suffering from congestion. It's a regional traffic problem. We need a very detailed planning to provide a solution. If we want to solve the problems at the Chong Roads roundabout, you need land for expansion, for widening. But the roundabout is surrounded by housing blocks. There's little room to provide additional space unless we demolish some of the estates there. Well, transport and housing now come under the same bureau. It's a question of whether you are willing to do something. There are some old estates. Of course, you can rehouse them in situ. I understand why Mr. Wang Guangya asked for planning for the future. Land is limited. Uphill, you have a big park, and with the new development, you are rightly concerned about the traffic because of the lack of long-term planning. I'm unhappy. I talk about this in the seminar. I have a few meetings in private with them. If we continue like this, we'll be wasting our land, and that would just be the thing criticized by the central authorities. Now you need 30 minutes for this particular stretch of the road, and in the future you say that the same would happen. I would be very disappointed.
This is a large project. Next, Ibrahim. Regarding this Anderson Road quarry, I think it's necessary to redevelop. Land supply is very limited, and we need to make good use of sites. If you look at some development ratios, 25,000 population, private public development 80-20. So aside from this plan, should we have public housing developed that can accommodate 48,000? We've been focusing on this plan, but it adds up to some 70,000 people. Is that accurate? If that is the case, then I'm concerned about what Ms. Chan Yunhan has highlighted. This is a hillside development, and congestion now is typically half an hour, so it might be congested for more than an hour in the future. We need road changes. But can you accommodate 70,000 people here? Aside from traffic, you need to connect the different roads. So the public housing that is built on a hill, they might be cut off from the rest of the area because of lack of transportation facilities. Thank you, Chan. CEDD. I had explained just now, we have a whole traffic coordination plan. We understand that when we have public housing at the foot of the hill and on the hill, this would be an extra population burden. We have extra roads to deal with the population increase. I mentioned interchange 6. So traffic from outside coming in will rely on the new Highway 6. The Kuntong Highway, Zhongguanou Highway can accommodate extra traffic. on top of the quarry, the residents do not necessarily have to go down to the Guntong MTR. They can also go to the Lamtin MTR, which is closer. So in our introduction, we refer to Sao Mao Ping Road and the Duck Road. In Kaitin Road, we will also widen the embarking, disembarking shoulder banks. So we'll strengthen the connectivity within the area and also connectivity with outside the area. So, as we said just now, we have pedestrian footbridges and facilities. For example, within the district, people will conduct shopping, recreation. They can use these footbridges to connect to Sao Mao Ping Estate, Bodat Estate. They don't need to take taxis or minibuses. They can use these new facilities. So even with full housing development, impact on Hip Wo Street, the roundabout in Hip Wo Street, it will only increase 3% traffic. So we feel the traffic impact has been considered and resolved. So has this been done? The housing development will they'll be able to move in by 2020. We will complete this before 2020. The pedestrian facilities will be completed at the same time. You see when. I support developing this quarry. Paragraph 12 deals with the cabin as a tourist development. Albert Chan had already touched on this. Will a park be built there? Well, there can be other developments. You mentioned a spa. Could you consider building hotels? Should you consider a tourist flow, impact on the area? Now, if you have a good area there, it's close to the cruise terminal and close to Saigon. So this is an area that you should consider. I'm concerned about traffic in Kowloon East because there's more population. They might use the Clearwater Bay Road to access Saigon. Now that is a traffic network, so just resolving the local traffic is not sufficient. You should consider the wider network. You see that the population forecast is 25,000, so we're talking about 9,000 units, and there'll be car parks. How many cars can be parked there? If we have private housing, there might be insufficient car park spaces. Or if we have a lot of car park spaces, then we'll have a lot of private cars. This would lead to more traffic problems. So will housing estates limit the number of car park spaces? So I'll defer to CEDD for the park development. Our planning department can talk about. Our planning includes a quarry park and we'll use the cavern to build lookout sites. Within the cabin, we can have some footpaths to the country parks. The quarry design, we also wish to reflect the heritage and on the rock face. It can be used for commercial purposes. We're also thinking of a vertical transport system where the cabin commercial development can be transported to the community center. The community centers have also set aside space for commercial development. So we hope our design is that the cabin space and commercial development can attract traffic to visit the quarry and cabins. Regarding the commercial land use, we have not specified hotels, but this commercial land has some flexibility. This commercial land we're now reserving the flexibility on the private car park space, in the private housing developments. We'll provide car park spaces according to planning guidelines. We also need to consider the access. If there's easy access, we will adjust the car park spaces. Well, our allotted time is 11 o'clock. I wish in the first round we still have Mr. Chanakan Nagaki Ujiwai. Does anybody else wish to speak? Ms. Chan Yunhan wants to speak in the second round. If there's no objection, I suggest we extend 15 minutes to 11:15. No objection. Mr. Chanakan. A lot of colleagues had asked my question. As Cycling District Council said, can the public housing ratio be enhanced, increased, because the government is looking for land to build housing, and there are a lot of objections. But since you have such a nice site, can you increase the plot ratio? And a lot of colleagues had talked about traffic arrangements. It's on a hill, and even though government official says that it's only going to increase traffic by 3%, but I'm going to want to tell the officials the new Guntong CBD traffic flow is very large. If there's a 3% on the hill, 3% in the new CBD, so given such narrow streets in industrial buildings, you might affect the whole Kuntong area. So the government needs to rethink this, especially your communication with the Kuntong District Council. Will you have a mechanism to communicate traffic problems with the District Council? My third question is about human traffic. You have two roads connecting to Sao Mau Ping. one route A, route B. But route B, I think the design is not so good. If you refer to the PowerPoint, in route B, they suggest using footbridges and lift towers. I would like to say this is the worst option. If you look at Bodot Estate, they also have elevators, lift towers connecting mini bus stop with Sao Mau Ping. So during the peak hours, the queue extends forever. So if Route B uses a lift tower, I'm concerned history will repeat itself, especially when you think when there's maintenance work, there'll only be one route left. So please reconsider your option.
問題。咁
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chen Hacken, for your questions. Let me talk first about the ratio between public and private housing. We propose a private to the public ratio of 80 to 20, because in Sao Mau Ping, the 4 estates with the name including the word Sun, and also Podart Estate, is already 90% taken up by public housing. If we complete the Anderson Road quarry site, the ratio will still be will further go up. So we propose this 80-20%, with 80 given to private housing, and then the overall ratio for public will be 84%. So we need to have an appropriate ratio. We'll adjust the ratio in accordance with our planning needs. And also, when the long-term housing strategy is firm up, and we may need to further adjust the ratio, but that would not be just an adjustment for this project alone. I would defer to my colleague on traffic. For this project, we have already considered the traffic increase of Kwun Tong development projects. So the 3% has already taken a part. Those are the developments, and there will be a further improvement to Hip Wall Street Junction. Well, I have a look at the problems associated with Podart Estate lifts. It has to do with the topography. For this type of topography with a big difference in elevation, it's too steep for escalators. You have to build lifts. And we have considered the peak pedestrian volumes and design the lifts to cope with the peak demand. What about repair maintenance? We'll take into account the capacity reduction when maintenance is required. We have a few lift towers. We can have a twin lift towers in some at some locations. Mr. Alan Leung, thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 9 of the paper given to us today, it said you need $187 million. And there's nothing on traffic impact assessment. Is it covered by the environmental impact assessment? Please let me know. And other members have raised the same issue. On an ordinary day, if you drive there, you use Clearwater Bay Road, going down to Auchiwan Market. Miss Chen Yunhan said it takes 30 minutes. She might have underreported the time required. It said that Route 6 will be there. We'll have some expectations, some big expectations for Route 6 because of the diversion, the large number of vehicles to be diverted there. And now the Secretary said it's just 10%. 10% is not a big number. And with the Anderson Road site development, you are going to add 10% to the traffic. That means no change from what it is now. Is there not any room for improvement? And you say that for the Choi Hong roundabout, and you cannot really make the space bigger with all the housing estates surrounding the roundabout. But since you are going to carry out a study, please consider what can be done. Well, even if it would require the demolition of 3 blocks in Choi Hong estate, and Choi Hong estate is old, there's a room to build something with a higher plot ratio, and you have to consider what the tenants can be, where the tenants can be housed in the interim. If the government is committed and hardworking, it should work out some proposals. So, do you have any thinking along this line? And having heard members' concern here, what do you think can be done? And according to Mr. Thomas Chan, consideration will be given to the adjustment of the private to public housing ratio. You know, HA finds it difficult to get sites for PR public rental housing, and this site is up on the hill, and I don't think anyone will object to public housing there. So perhaps you can be more proactive in public housing development there. Traffic. I mentioned that there will be trunk roads which will help us alleviate traffic congestions. In the design, we have taken on board all the traffic impact assessments. So for this particular project, we don't have to spend a lot of money on traffic assessment again. For Clear Water Bay, we have assessed the situation very carefully. With Route 6, the traffic can be reduced. So with the new public rental housing estates built there, the road conditions will not be worse off than what it is now. Well, but according to some members, the traffic conditions are very bad. So why don't you do something to improve it? Or you cannot think of any improvement? I think there must be something that you can do. Well, improvement to the Choi Hong roundabout is something you need to study in great detail, and we need to have more discussion. It will involve a resumption of land extensively. And we're saying that the traffic generated by this Anderson Road Quarry Bay site will be manageable. As for other improvement measures, the government will be working on those separately. As CEDD has said, if we just look at this Anderson Road Quarry site, we are able to cope. But the problems, the issues associated with the roundabout are separate issues. We understand the District Council is actively pursuing relevant matters. We would brief the District Council in due course and talk to them as well. Mr. Wu Jiwei. The scope of this quarry site has been reduced because of concerns about traffic in the vicinity. So the government should take a good look at this. And you should look ahead for look ahead and assess the Choi Hong, the roundabout traffic. By that time, 10 years down the road, Choi Hong will be very aged. Choi Hong Estate will be very aged. And now Saigon and Kwun Tong district councils are very concerned about the poor traffic conditions. And the traffic conditions, which are very poor already, will not be improved because of this new quarry site development. As the director has said, the best you can do is not to make it worse. But you will be wasting the scarce resources if, because of traffic, you cannot have a bigger development at this quarry-based site. You talk about the inability to improve the Choi Hong roundabout. But Choi Hong Estate is very old. Shouldn't this be put on the agenda item and think about alternative arrangements? We should not waste this valuable urban site. And now you have to reduce the scope of development because of traffic concerns for the vicinity. And also for road junctions along Clearwater Bay Road and on Chong Road, you should take the opportunity to widen the junctions. I don't know whether it's only through the further road junction expansions can the traffic be able to cope. You have already done this once for the developments beneath this Anderson Road's quarry-based site. And you have widened Clearwater Bay previously. And whether have I misunderstood you? And for Lintap Road, you have housing estates in front and the slope behind. Would you be able to cut the slope to provide more space for widening? Mr. Chan, let me clarify this point. We are not wasting this site, this quarry site. We have to make the best use of this Anderson Road quarry site. The scope of development means that the plot ratio is 5.5. And of course, traffic is a constraint. But we have to consider that this quarry site is high up on the hill. So in our design would be one that would protect the contour line of the hill behind, because it's a very prominent location from various locations. You can see it. We don't want to ruin the design by having a very big development there. For Clearwater Bay Road and Lintap Road, we have proposed some improvement because of the additional traffic generated by this quarry site development. 2 minutes, Ms. Chen Yin-Han. Well, my questions are the same as those raised by members. Some members have asked about my attitude towards the project. I would say that I do not support the project if it's kept like in its present form. You would say the contour line will be ruined by a big development. Well, I would say the damage has already been done because of other developments. Now you cannot develop as fully as you like because of traffic concerns. And even for a quarry park, you are not able to provide a good quarry park because you are concerned about the traffic situation for people and for vehicles. And the previous airport site is also going to be developed. These estates in question are Choi Hong, Ping Shat, are located next to the roundabout. Why don't you do something about them? And we're not talking about implementing this project next year. There's still a few years to go. And there are old districts in Choi Hong. And development is prevented because of poor traffic. So why don't you solve the problems? Please consider that, Mr. Chan, you have said 2 to 3 times that traffic is a constraint. Now we have land for you, so much land there, the airport side, and up on the hill we have this side. Chairman, I would say that we shouldn't accept this proposal. The Kwun Tong District Council is angry. They talk about these problems, and they use the word disastrous, because by the time the population, the new population move in. Well, as Mr. Albert Chan has said, I may have underestimated the time required. It may be 45 minutes instead of 30. So I hope they can withdraw this paper.
So we've had lengthy discussion and we end here. Legislators had expressed a lot of views, traffic problems, and development density, and whether you can consider developing a park. But I'd like to consult members. Would you object submitting this to the PWSC for funding? Anybody object? Could the government respond to the district council objections? Because the document says Sai Kung and Kwun Tong District Council support. I'll extend another 5 minutes, and the secretary can talk. First of all, on the district council, we had consulted. They do not object this public works, and they hope that we can provide housing land as soon as possible. And they also wish that we can increase the development density. But I'd also like to respond to Ms. Tan Yun Han. Ms. Tan Yun Han talked about a quarry park and commercial space. We'll follow up on that. We want to utilize this special site, and we'll spend more effort there. The other questions about Choi Hong interchange and Choi Hong Ping Sek Estate redevelopment. This comes under the Transport Housing Bureau. We'll refer this to Transport Housing Bureau. If we can make further traffic improvements to increase development density, we will consider that. Ms. Tan Yun Han objects to submitting this to PWSC for funding. Any other objections? Well, our colleagues have raised so many questions. The secretary also made some pledges. Then perhaps my inclination would be to let them go to the PWSC, but Mr. Lo Wai Gok should be made aware that we have so many problems. So Secretary needs to understand that if you can't solve the problems and the government can't live up to its pledge, then you'll also face difficulty in PWSC. A lot of questions need to be responded to. So, as Mr. Leongkakit said, Ms. Tan Yun Han has objected, and a lot of members have asked questions. This will be reflected to the PWSC, and we hope that they can follow up. Okay, if that's the case, we'll conclude this item. Do we have any other business? If not, we adjourn. Thank you.